So I think we think of a Christmas turkey as being possibly some unpleasant, kind of loud and unwelcome US import of something that's kind of muscled its way onto our tables, which is, kicked aside goose or some other, proper, more traditional food stuff. But again, that's not quite how it worked. Because certainly it's true that there weren't any turkeys in Britain before 1492 when, Columbus brought this stuff back. So turkeys weren't around in Britain in the Middle Ages. However, turkeys were being eaten for Christmas possibly before they were being eaten for Christmas in the United States. There's people argue that actually it was Charles Dickens's Christmas Carol, which was very popular in the US in the 19th century, which helped create this idea in the United States that that's what a proper Christmas was. So it was kind of a re-import back. Turkeys went across the Atlantic and they were milling about in Europe for hundreds of years, which has its own interesting story. But then at a certain point in the 19th century, people in the United States who were looking to Britain for an idea of heritage and deep history and, what is the kind of deep Anglo-American food tradition, what would it be? And they were all reading A Christmas Carol, and this is the real Christmas, and started then really thinking about turkey as something that belongs on a Christmas table rather than perhaps a Thanksgiving table. Well, it would be missing a number of things. So it probably wouldn't have had a turkey necessarily. That's a fair comment. Although turkeys were very, very popular as a banquet dish from the 1500s, and they were being raised commercially. They were being raised on such a large scale that they were being herded across the Pyrenees like sheep in the 1600s, and these huge flocks of turkeys. And they were being traded back and forth between France and Britain. People were sending turkeys, and there are letters from anxious turkey importers in the 1750s to their contacts in Bordeaux saying, "The ship has been delayed. I'm worried that all the turkeys will have putrefied. Perhaps you can wipe them down with a napkin so they don't rot." So there's this, trans-European turkey trade going on. But it's a fair question about whether they were necessarily being eaten for Christmas. So 400 years ago, you probably wouldn't have had a turkey. You might well have had a goose. You wouldn't have had roast potatoes, which really didn't become a popular foodstuff until really the 19th century. Potatoes people were eating all the time. Potatoes were popular from hundreds and hundreds of years, but you wouldn't necessarily have had a potato on the plate. You certainly wouldn't have had cranberry sauce if that's something that you choose to let onto your Christmas plate. Christmas pudding you would perhaps have had. So there would have been certain differences. The point really is that 400 years ago, there wasn't this set menu. There wasn't this idea that this is what you must eat for Christmas. So part of what's changed is our idea that the traditional foods are part of what makes it Christmas. So things were much more heterodox, the same way that you might say now, well, what's a typical birthday food? Which, whatever you feel like eating on your birthday, whatever makes you feel festive. So one of the changes, I think, has been the way in which these holidays have been pegged to particular menus, where we then say, it's got to have some sprouts on it to make it a Christmas dinner. So it could have been almost anything, but a much, much more heterogeneous range of foods. Who knows, maybe in 200 years, the entire balance of power will be very different, and we'll be thinking about the importance of China, and we'll be actually embracing an entirely different set of traditions. I have no idea. So one question is how geopolitics might be connected to food preferences. And so as different countries become influential and powerful, their holidays and their food preferences might be things that we become interested in and that we wish to start interacting with. So there's that dimension to it. There's also the question of how eating in general might change. I would think we have to eat an awful lot less meat in the future. I don't think there's enough meat to go around, and I don't think we should be eating meat. So perhaps what we should be doing is contemplating entirely different visions of festive meals that don't revolve around a large roasted animal. That would be probably environmentally very sound. That would probably be a good thing health-wise. So that would be a happy vision, unless you hate vegetables, in which case it would be some kind of hell.